Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Aaron here, and I thought about how I was going to structure this, how I was going to try and figure out the ordering in which I talk about things and comment on things, and I decided that instead of following like a Bible study or instead of trying to make like mini sermons or anything, crazy like that, I will simply start off by going through my favorite book of the Bible, one chapter at a time, and just let you guys know what I think about it and what it means to me, and possibly what it might mean to other people. That's what I'm thinking. As a preface, and I'll probably say this a bunch more times, I am no theologian. I am not a pastor. I am not a priest. I am not a expert in any regards about Christianity and the Bible. This is just simply a record of my thoughts that I'm recording for myself, for others, and kind of just something that I can look back on, basically. And so if you don't like it, that's okay. If you disagree, that's okay. Let me know if you disagree. And you don't even have to be nice about it. I would hope that you're going to be nice about it, but you don't have to be. You can say things however you want. I will probably not take it personally. But without further ado, what is my favorite book of the Bible? My favorite book of the Bible, the Christian Bible, meaning the Old Testament, New Testament, is 100% the book of Proverbs. And for those of you that don't know what the book of Proverbs is, how it relates to Christianity, how it relates to Judaism, I'm going to tell you. The book of Proverbs is basically a large collection of, well, Proverbs. It's pretty simple. It's wisdom literature. It's anecdotes. It's analogies. It's a weave of teaching the reader how to become wise and how to pursue wisdom. And in terms of Christianity, it is part of the wisdom literature. It is not just Proverbs, the wisdom literature. It is Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, as well as Job is seen as the three books of the wisdom literature. In terms of Jewish tradition and how they view and where they view it, I believe it's part of the Tanakh, and this is poetry and wisdom. So there's stuff on my desk, poetry and wisdom and Proverbs and stuff like that. So this is poetry, so Psalms, Job, and I think also Proverbs. But anyways, it is also seen as Jewish canon as well. It is a canon event. Nonetheless, I think for me, Proverbs has been a huge help in how I structure my thoughts on myself, how I structure my thoughts on others, and how I approach conversation and approach situations that can be tough to make decisions, or situations where there are tough decisions. There we go. I worded that better. And there's a bunch of amazing books of the Bible. I believe that the entire Bible is amazing, but for me, Proverbs has spoken to me. And when I say spoken to me, I mean it kind of resonates with things that I'm thinking about. That's what I mean when I say it speaks to me. But it's spoken to me every time I've read it, and in different ways. So I'm not constantly thinking the same things every time I read it. And so when we read it together, most likely the things that I say will be different than the things that I've thought in the past. And so that's a brief overview of Proverbs. And as is the first video, we're going to start off with Proverbs 1, naturally. I'm going to be reading out of the English Standard Version, And if you would like to read along, that's what I'm using. If not, feel free to enjoy my sultry voice that I have a huge stuff up nose, so hopefully it's not too bad. But I'm going to break it down as the Bible has broken it down. So we have the beginning of knowledge, the enticement of sinners, and the call of wisdom. Those are the three sections that we'll be going through today. So let's start off with this first section. First section is Proverbs 1, verses 1 through 7, and it's subtitled The Beginning of Knowledge. And it starts off Proverbs 1:1, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and the riddles. The fear of the Lord is in the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Now, this is obviously an introduction to everything that's going to be going on. And as I was reading it, a few things pop up. And as I was reading it, a few things popped up. There we go. Number one, in no particular order, was right at the end, Solomon is saying, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And it's going to talk about this. This is going to be a theme throughout the entire book of Proverbs. We're going to see time and time again the contrast between the wise person and the fool. We're going to see a contrast of the things that should be done and the things that shouldn't be done. And so this kind of play back and forth is going to be constantly seen. And in my own life, I've noticed time and time again, wise decisions that I make reap results that are beneficial to me and the ones around me. Foolish decisions that I make are almost always negatively consequential. And I didn't want to say just have consequences, because something that was taught to me and instilled in me as a child was that every decision you make has consequences. And the word consequence is not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a result of something. And so that's why I said negative consequences, I think. But that's just for future reference. I might say consequence of something and it's actually good. It's because I believe that a consequence is just a result of an action. Anyways, in my life, there have been many times where I refused to listen, refused to heed, as some might say, wise instruction, wise advice, and when I deliberately shied away from it, most of the time, I don't have a specific example, but I'm thinking like as a kid, not listening to my parents. This is the view that I'm imagining, the scene I'm imagining in my head. Most of the time, I believe it was either one of two things. One, I believed that I knew better without knowing what I didn't know. So basically, I thought I knew everything because I was blind or ignorant, one could say, to the things that I don't know. And we're gonna get into this later on because it mentions that, or it alludes to the fact that the wise man understands that how little he really knows. And I think that that's one of the first true signs of wisdom, is understanding that fact. And so when I was younger, I didn't understand that. And so my entire worldview was what there was in my mind. If that makes sense. Everything that I knew in my mind, that was all there was to know. I couldn't possibly learn more or I couldn't possibly experience something that I haven't experienced before. I saw it all. By the age of 13, I've seen it all. I know everything. I know what's going on here. I'm wise to the world and what's going on around me. So when someone presented me with instruction, with when I say instruction, I mean like kind of teaching and trying to guide me in a certain direction, and it was against something that I personally wanted or personally thought was the right choice, or I don't even think the word wise choice. I made a distinction between the two, and I don't know where I was headed with this, but if there was, yes, there we go. If there was a difference between what they said and what I thought was right, I would disregard what they were saying, them in my mind being my parents or being people with significantly more experience and understanding of the world than I did at the time. There was no way that they could be right just because I couldn't be wrong. And my lack of open-mindedness, which is something that I personally believe is a huge aspect of being a compassionate person, is being open-minded. But my closed-mindedness kept me from heeding, which, for those of you that know the word but don't know the word, heeding is basically listening to something and also following through with it. So if I didn't heed those instructions or those teachings, it almost always landed with me getting in some sort of situation, negative situation, I might add. And as I got older, I learned that I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. And so I found myself, even now, going back over the lessons that my parents taught me and the things that they've said. And sometimes something will just pop up. I'm like, I remember dad saying, or mom saying something similar to that. Man, if only I had listened. And almost literally in those words, that's something I'll be thinking, is that, man, I should have listened. And that is something that Proverbs and something that our parents and something that wise Christian leaders and mentors try to convey to whoever they're trying to influence, is that they're not doing this, and Solomon isn't writing this for his own good. The parents aren't giving you advice just to make them feel. Parents shouldn't be giving advice just to make themselves feel better. And the book of Proverbs isn't there just to make Solomon feel good, be like, yes, I know all of these things, and I'm just gonna show off my my intellect and my wisdom. But it is for the reader's benefit, and parents' instruction is for the children's benefit. And so as we read this, and as I read it, I view it as, okay, this is here for a reason. It's not how can I see this in others' lives? It becomes, how can I see it in my life? And how can I change myself? This is not, in my mind, this is not a book on which I can be judging others. This is a book where, as I read it, I am looking within myself and inward, not outward. I'm not trying to see the foolishness of others. I'm trying to see the foolishness in myself and realign or correct the foolish man within me. And so as I think about things and as I learn things and as I hear things from other people, I find as well something that gets me, and when my pride starts acting up, is you'll know something is correct, is wise, but you really want to make the foolish choice. You really want to make that dumb decision. And where it says fools despise wisdom and instruction, that is so true. Because it's not that they don't understand what's being said to them is wise all the time. They might know what's being said to them is wise, but they actively choose, and I have actively chosen and will probably choose in the future to do the foolish thing despite wise counsel. And this is why I love the book of Proverbs so much, is because it helps me to refine my own thinking and how I view myself and how I conduct myself. Verse 5 says, "Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtains guidance." And for me, initially, when I read this book, I was like, I'm gonna read this and then I can call myself wise. And boy, howdy, when I finished, was I humbled. I can say that I am on the process of gaining wisdom, and I can say that I am wise in some aspects of life. But the term wise person, I believe, shouldn't be given by oneself. And no one has told me, Aaron, you are a wise man. So obviously I got some work to do. But all joking aside, this book is for people who crave wisdom, who want to be a wise person. And so with this verse 5 saying, "Let the wise hear and increase in learning," it is letting the reader know, if you want to be wise, here is your opportunity to learn, to increase in learning, and to hear what I, being Solomon, have to say. And as we move forward, just recognize that Solomon isn't doing this for his own good. He wants to impart knowledge and wisdom onto us. And so that is the first part. Let's see how we're doing for time. 19 minutes. Peace. The second part is verses 8 through to 19. Verse 8 starts with, "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching, for they are a grateful garland for your head and pendants for your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, 'Come with us, let us lie in wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without reason. Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive and whole. Like those who go down into the pit, we shall find all precious goods. We shall fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot among us. We will all have one purse. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths, for their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood. For in vain is a net spread in the sight of any bird, but these men lie in wait for their own blood. They set an ambush for their own lives. Such are the ways of everyone who is greedy for unjust gain. It takes away the life of its possessors." The problem with me trying to make quick videos is that there's so much to unpack here. There's so much to unpack, so I hope you bear with me, and I have so many thoughts on it, and it's gonna be out of whack because, as I mentioned probably before, I don't have a script. I don't plan on having a script. I am just hoping that the Lord filters my words and I am not speaking heresy. And if I am, my sincerest apologies, that's not my heart. Let's go through this. Verses 8 and 9 are exactly what I said earlier about parents' instructions. "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching." It's not exactly obey your father and mother. It's a, I forget the term for it, but basically it's telling us without telling us exactly that your father and your mother have things to speak into you. They are wells of knowledge and experience, and not that they're perfect, but their imperfection is just as useful as their not their perfection. Their imperfections are just as useful as their gifts and their strengths, we'll say. Because not only can you learn from the things that people do well, you can also learn from the things that people don't do well. you and yourself. Obviously, you can learn from failures and from success. And so your father, your mother, as I'm growing up, I'm recognizing and realizing that they have failed many times. They have succeeded many times. And the things that they say for my benefit are not just, they didn't come from nowhere. They came from personal experience, personal witness, and it's something that they believe is true. And so they also believe that it is useful for me. And so that's something that I've also been trying to wrap my head around as well. Verse 9, sorry, I need to continue, is, for they are graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck. Meaning, in my mind, that they are gifts for you. Their wisdom, their instruction, their teaching are gifts for you to set you up for success later on in life. Now, the next part, I'm just going to keep going. The next part is talking about the scenario where people are coming to entice the reader to go mug and rob someone and take all of their stuff and share it among us, themselves, and they don't need it, we need it. We're gonna wait in the dark and then go, get some stuff that isn't ours but will become ours. And in verse 12 it says, like shale, let us swallow them alive, and whole, like those who go down into the pit, we shall find all precious goods and fill our houses with plunder. That's what I'm talking about. That's what their proposition is. And it's not necessarily directly, this isn't saying for just this scenario where people like, hey Aaron, let's go hit a lick, which is let's go rob somebody. It's anytime someone proposes we do wrong. And this particular analogy is for, at the verse 19, we see it's for unjust gain, or for people who are greedy and want to get things that don't belong to them. But I see it as not just that, but for any wrong thing. The people that we are around, the people that we surround ourselves with, influence our decisions, influence who we are as people. And this is a warning that if you surround yourself with a certain type of people, they are going to suggest certain types of things. So let's think about this. I try to hang around and surround myself with wise people, and with people smarter than me, more athletic than me, people who are more successful than me, nicer than me, because that is who they are. And so they're going to suggest things. Sorry, my light got all messed up. There we go. They're going to suggest things that align with who they are. Take inversely, for example, muggers, or people who see no wrong in stealing. Let's do that. Theft. People who like to shoplift. You surround yourself with those people because that's what they feel comfortable doing. They will suggest things that are about that, or they will suggest things that align with that. They're going to suggest, hey, we hang out together. Why don't you come do the things that we do? And this is a warning for that, because if we go down to verse 15, this is the conclusion to that scenario. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths, for their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood. For in vain is a net spread in sight of any bird, but these men lie in wait for their own blood. They set an ambush for their own lives. Such are the ways of everyone who is greedy for unjust gain. It takes away the life of its possessors. These people who want to do bad. They think that they're getting good things from doing bad. But these verses let us know that they are not destined for good things. These people that, and I don't want to say these people as in to suggest like, because this is sinning. And I don't want to suggest that I am not a sinner. I am not a part of them. I am saying that people who are dedicated to sin and live sinful lives are, as verse 16 puts it, running to evil, and they make haste to shed blood. These men are waiting for their own blood, and they set an ambush for their own lives. The doing of bad things is, I wish I could put it in more flowery, wise words, but although they may gain earthly possessions, they are actually dying spiritually, or dying, and they may take someone's physical life, but they have actually taken their own spiritual life. I'll just leave it at that. And if you're confused, I apologize. That's probably the best way I can describe it. That is the first little tidbit of wisdom, and I love it already. I hope you're following me. I hope I'm not too confusing, but I love it already. I love this stuff, bro. Last but not least, the verses 20 to 33 being the last verse of chapter 1 of Proverbs, is the call to wisdom. It says, "Wisdom cries aloud in the street. In the markets she raises her voice. At the head of the noisy streets she cries out. At the entrance of the city gates she speaks. How long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing, and fools hate knowledge? If you turn at my reproof, behold, I will pour out my spirit to you. I will make my words known to you. Because I have called and you refuse to listen. I've stretched out my hand and no one has heeded. Because you have ignored all my counsel and would have none of my reproof, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when terror strikes you. When terror strikes you like a storm and your calamity comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you. Then they will call upon me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but will not find me. Because they hated my knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord, would have none of my counsel, and despised all my reproof. Therefore, they shall eat the fruit of their way, and have their fill of their own devices. For the simple are killed by their turning away, and the complacency of fools destroys them. But whoever listens to me will dwell secure, and will be at ease without dread of disaster." And so this is part 1, verses 20 to 21, is setting the scene for us of this wisdom, this character of wisdom calling out. It is portrayed as a woman. She is in a loud street, in the markets, and the head of noisy streets. She is everywhere. So streets, markets, and city gates. She's crying out to people. How long, O simple ones, will you be love being simples? The scoffers delight in the scoffing, and fools hate knowledge. Nowadays, people would take offense to that, because she's calling people who are not with her simple, scoffers, and fools. If anyone came to me and called me a fool, I would probably immediately, at least, have a reaction of taking offense, and probably have an extended reaction of taking offense. But eventually, hopefully I would, hopefully if they had the proper intentions, I would no longer feel offense. But the reason why I believe wisdom says this is it's a call for us to recognize our own faults. As I said, Proverbs is about wisdom and introspection. She says, how long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? And then I'll be like, I'm not simple. But then I might, later on be like, am I simple? Why would wisdom say I'm simple? And start thinking about that. How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing? And then I start to think, I'm like, do I delight in scoffing at others? Do I delight in saying negative things on social media? Do I like mocking people? Do I find pleasure in that? And then she says, fools hate knowledge. And then you look inward again. So you get the gist. Then she being the character of wisdom, gives us the solution, gives us hope. She then says, if you turn at my reproof, behold, I will pour my spirit to you, the spirit of wisdom. I will make my words known to you, wise words, period. Because then we start getting negative again. The verse 23 is what we stand to gain by listening to the call of wisdom. We gain the spirit of wisdom, and we will understand the words of wisdom. Then she then talks about those who refuse to listen, those who, let's go back to my analogy, but not my analogy, but my telling of myself, who knows what the right choice is, but chooses the foolish choice. Let's go back to that. And so I am this person who chose to do the foolish thing. This is talking to me in this case. She says, because I have called out to you and refused to listen, I've stretched out my hand and you haven't heeded, because you ignored all my counsel. I will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when terror strikes you. When terror strikes you like a storm, and your calamity comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come to you. I find this particular section pretty disturbing, and I'm myself am confused, because I get that this isn't an actual person and it is wisdom, but the imagery of someone mocking me because I refuse to listen to them seems counterintuitive to the Christian life, seems counterintuitive to how we are to act. And so I will then try and take away the human aspect of this character of wisdom, and let's think of it as just the entity of wisdom itself. Wisdom mocks. Wisdom laughs at our calamity. It's basically saying that there is going to be a large amount of irony to the negative consequences of your actions, because you had this chance and you knew you had this chance, and now it's gone wrong, but all of a sudden you want to go back to listening to what I had to say. Or as Michael Scott would say, oh, how the turns have tabled. It goes on to saying, as I just mentioned, then they will call upon me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord, would have none of my counsel and despised all my reproof. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their way and have their fill of their own devices. This again is another warning, I would say, and I think also to a lesser extent, one of those answers as to why bad things happen. I would say, I could be wrong, but that's something I would say. It's a hypothesis that I could make. Because if we were to do something wrong on purpose, the foolish choice, and never have any negative consequences, things always turned out in the end, there is no incentive for us to then change our ways and become more wise. If everything just works out in the end, why would I make a different decision? Why would I turn away from being a fool if it just works anyways? And so I forget where I heard this, but we were talking about laws, and there is you like laws of physics, laws of nature. And so if you drop something, it will fall because of the law of gravity. And let's talk about the concept of consequences. You know, I have a D6 here, a die. If I drop this die, it's gonna fall. That's because the consequence of me dropping this die at height is that the die will then follow that law of gravity and fall down until it hits the surface. Similarly, the consequence of an action, especially a foolish action, may be something bad. And if it, in case of a foolish action, is most likely something bad. And the law of we'll call it the law of nature, is that unless there's an intervention, so let's go back to this die, unless for some reason the law of gravity ceases to work when I drop this die, the consequence is predetermined. There will be a consequence, and it is because we know of this law, we can guess accurately the consequence of this action. Because we have the wisdom to understand the law of gravity, we can comfortably predict to a great amount of certainty the consequence of me letting go of this die in the air. Let's go back to this foolish decision. Some of these foolish decisions, people who are wiser than us can see the decision we're making. Foolish decision, let's say. Let's say I'm driving. I don't know why I'm coming up with this. I'm driving and there's a car in front of me, 50 yards, I'm not American, 50 meters up the road. If I'm going 50 kilometers an hour, and I don't stop, and I don't stop, I will hit that car in front of me if it is stopped. The consequence of me not stopping is that I will hit this thing. And so my wise wife, who is my passenger, will tell me, Aaron, you should probably stop before you hit this car. And you know what? That is because she knows and is wise to the fact and can see the predictable outcome of me making a foolish choice. She knows what the consequence will be of me choosing not to brake in time. That can also be said for many different situations that are more obscure than that, not as straightforward, but there are people out there who have experienced things more than once. They've seen people make the same mistake over and over and over again, and they can see the things that predate that, and you start to see things start to pop up, and it's like, that reminds me of a lot of other things that happen. And they see something pop up and like, oh, now there's two things, and they keep seeing things pops up, and then they tell that person, hey man, if you keep going down this path, you will probably insert ending here, because they've seen that so many times before. That is their wisdom speaking. And in this case, in verses 20 to 33, the wisdom of those words, the wisdom of that teaching and instruction, because that person refuses to listen, because I refuse to stop, because, you know, they choose to make the wrong choice, even if they know it's the wrong choice. If that consequence is it, if the die, I can't do this slowly, but it's falling down. There's the law of gravity is the consequence is not gonna stop part way. It's happening. It is gonna happen. And I might be like, well, dang, I didn't want this die to fall. I didn't want this die to fall. But the consequence is going to happen because I have done that action. And in the same way, making a foolish action, I'm beating a dead horse probably at this point, but making a foolish action does, and not all the time, but most likely in terms of this teaching, lead to eating the fruit of their way, to having their fill of their own devices, meaning that terror strikes, calamity happens, you're in a storm, terror strikes in a storm. Those are all the different, calamity comes like a whirlwind, all of the analogies that are given to the consequences of foolish decisions. And this whole call of wisdom is to give us a bit of a wake-up call, to be like, you know what? I want to learn these things, to learn these rules, to learn these wise teachings from people who have seen all of these things happen many times before. I want to learn those things so that I can avoid those foolish actions, those foolish thoughts, those foolish words. And then, likewise, at the same time, there we go, and then simultaneously, if I'm avoiding foolish actions, I'm avoiding negative consequences. Then, let's go tie this back to the very beginning, or the end of the beginning, where it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And as a Christian who values knowing sorry, how do I do this? Oh my goodness. There we go. As a Christian who values knowing things, and as a Christian who wants to do the right thing, understanding that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, to me, means that I've already taken a step in the right direction by becoming a Christian. And one of the reasons why I think that this is especially true is because Christianity and the Bible portrays an ideal life, an ideal set of rules or mindsets or actions and words and thoughts that are inherently in line with God's will and inherently wise, leading to positive consequences. And so for me, going back to my life and my faith life, I find that the more I follow what I believe the Bible tells me to do, and the less I do what, I don't want to say what I want to do, but the less I do what the foolish part of me says to do, and the worldly, I guess, part of me says to do, and the more I want to do what God wants me to do, as that lines up, the happier I am, the more fulfilled life I have. And so for me, Christianity isn't just getting into heaven. It isn't just having a relationship with God. It is those things. Don't get me wrong, it is those things, but it's not just those things. To me, Christianity is also pursuing happiness, because at the root of happiness, I'll say, is joy. And again, for me and in my life and in my experiences, living a Christian life and trying to live a more Christian life has led to more joy rather than less joy. And I may talk about this later, but I think a lot of people get turned off by Christianity due to legalism or legalistic Christians who say you need to do a certain thing at this time, a certain way. You need to do these things a certain way, and that's just because that's how it is. And I don't believe it is the case. There is a lot of areas where even Christians, I close my eyes because I'm trying to think, even Christians disagree, but some situations do not have one right answer. I believe in universal truth where there is an objective truth, but some situations and I'll stick with that, some situations can have multiple right answers. There's only one way to get to heaven. There's only one way to become a Christian. And there's only one perfect way to live. But the attitude that Jesus portrays and wants us to have, the mindset that Jesus wants us to have, allows us to act in love in our own individual and unique way, is what I'm trying to get at. And I believe that is very biblical. And for anyone listening or watching, if you're interested in Christianity, just know that, at least for me, you can take my word for a grain of salt, but for me, I do not find it constrictive. I do not find it myself hating the fact that I am told to act a certain way, because I believe in the knowledge that it gives, and because I've seen how following the Bible and following Jesus' example has proven invaluable to my mental health, to my relationships, and to my happiness, I can say with a strong amount of conviction that God can do the same for you. And at this point, if you have no idea how to become a Christian, and that sounds like something that's interesting to you, I want to point you in the direction of the famous verse of John 3:16. It tells us the gospel in a nutshell. And you probably know it. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. That begotten Son is Jesus. We as Christians believe that Jesus died on the cross, was physically raised 3 days later, beat death, and took the punishment of our sin upon himself. And if we choose to believe in that and we repent, meaning we ask for forgiveness for those bad things that we've done, those sins, and we turn away from them and choose to pursue that perfect life that I was talking, we won't ever reach it on earth, but we choose to pursue and to go towards that rather than things we've done in the past, then our sins are completely wiped clean. It says in the Bible that God will forget those sins. And through Jesus's death and resurrection, through that sacrifice, we have been offered a gift from God and from Jesus of eternal life, of eternal satisfaction, of eternal joy, and a life that is a life after this one that is so full of happiness joy, and just goodness. And they're offering us a lifestyle that even on earth and in our mortal lives gives us an opportunity to have joy, have resilience for the bad things that happen in life, the curveballs that life throws our way. It provides us an opportunity to learn a life and practice a lifestyle that is ultimately better than anything we could think of or figure out on our own. And if you're interested in that, I highly suggest you go check out a church, check out a local church. If you want to stay online and want to check out an online church, please, by all means, go check out Lux Digital Church. It's on Twitch. I'll link it in the description. You can check me out there. I'm not on staff there, but I actively participate there, and I love those guys. I can vouch for their theological teachings, and it is a real church that's online, and I think that's pretty cool. And so check that out. You can message me, you can message a Christian friend that you have, but that offer is not coming from me, it's coming from God, and it is always there. Similar, but not exactly, how wisdom is crying out. God is offering you the chance of salvation and a chance to start everything fresh. You are not too broken, you are not too bad, you are not too far gone to receive God's love. He loves you anyways. Whether you choose to receive this gift or not, he still loves you. And whether you choose to believe that or not, he still loves you. That being said, thank you for watching. I love you. Hope to see you again. And until next time, see you later.